Hi, Xiaoxuan. Morning. Hi, Shui. Morning.
Morning, Freeman and Shojan, and Andrew.
Hey everyone, how we doing?
Andrew, good evening.
Morning.
Evening.
Maybe let's wait for 2 more minutes for others to join us. Andrew, you are in Chicago this week, right?
I'm in North America at least. I'm actually in Houston, Texas. So same time zone, but still.
Okay, so it's 8 p.m. in your
7.
local time zone?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay.
It's 1 hour behind New York City.
I'm sharing the agenda topics in our Zoom chat. And you can see if any other topics you want to add to today's meeting agenda. Currently, we have only 2 agenda items. One is to discuss the remaining comments in an ORAS specification. It's actually to improve ORAS diagnostic experience. Another one is to quickly update the ORAS V1.3 status and release timeline. Andrew, do you have anything special or updates from your side, especially for the OCI integration with Argo CD?
We've had a lot of good conversations and some feedback. One of the users, Blake, who's driving a lot of the development, has a PR out there. He and I have been collaborating. I requested that he go back and create some additional changes because whatever he did broke it or something broke. So he's doing some work on his side to work on it. So it's good, but not a ton of progress. With everyone coming back from the summertime here in North America and Europe, I do expect folks to make a little bit more velocity on that effort.
Great. I think Sylvia and Shui have been collaborating closely with you and other folks in the Argo CD community in reviewing the pull request and proposal, right?
Yep, been great.
Yeah. Awesome. I think we have most of the ORAS maintainers joined. Hi, Sajay, Sylvia, and Billy.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning and
Hey,
good
David. Hey, guys.
evening or afternoon.
Awesome. I think it's time to start. Terry will not be able to join us due to his personal conflict, and as well as E. They both will not be able to join us. So we will publish the recording and meeting notes after this meeting. Oh, sorry, my cat jumped to my table. Okay, so we have 2 topics collected from the community. One is for the ORAS diagnostic experience improvement. We had a specification pull request raised in the community, and we finished the first round of review 2 weeks ago. And I received a lot of feedback and suggestions from the community. I think maybe we can address some highly frequently asked questions and also some comments in this meeting. Another topic is regarding the ORAS v1.3 release timeline and plan for this milestone. Let me share my screen. I just shared the meeting agenda link in our Zoom chat. So if you want to add further topics, feel free to add to this list. If not, we're gonna go through these topics one by one. I'm seeing Sajay is editing this HackMD documentation. So Sajay, do you have any topics you want to add?
No, nothing in specific. Let's finish this, and if we have time, then we can go over something else.
Okay. I have some updates on this specification, and also I think I also updated the open question section. Let me check whether my updates have been pushed to this document. Okay, sorry, give me seconds. I think my updates are not synced to this branch. I will need to submit my latest commit to this branch, so you can see my updates. All right, just submit my local change to this branch. And I summarized the common questions and topics and comments in the last section. So actually, I have seen some questions that have been asked for several times and worth further discussion in this meeting. So currently, I have seen these 4 questions have the most attention in the first round of review. Maybe we can start with these questions. I think the common direction is to deprecate one flag and have a unified flag such as debug or verbals to control all of the debug logs. This is the direction that we're gonna go. And here are the 4 questions that we may need further alignment on it. So first question, I want to ask your opinions on should ORAS applies different log level to differentiate the log information. For example, should we introduce info, arrow, and other levels in ORAS debug logs going forward? This is actually a comment from Shui in this conversation. I think currently only debug logs is introduced and generated by ORAS. Other level logs like information, warning, error are not used and generated by ORAS. So I think for the diagnose flag options, if only debug level logs is captured and generated by ORAS, it's much more straightforward and less breaking if we only duplicate verbose flag and remain debug flag as it is. And will there be more log level like information, warning, and error introduced into debug logs in the future?
I might be biased, but my opinion is to drop debug because output is more verbose rather than debug. But maybe I'm not following what is the proposal here?
My initial proposal is to deprecate the debug flag and have a unified flag verbose to only output the debug logs. But after investigation on other tools like Docker, Podman, Helm, and other registry client tools, I find that debug option might be the most common option for enabling the debug logs. So for example, Helm has a global flag, debug to enable verbose output. Docker and Podman, both them provides two options, debug and log level. For debug logs, it has an individual option, debug to control the debug logs, and log level to control the detailed log level, such as info, debug, warm. No verbose option inside Docker and Podman. For curl, I think this tool is to interact with the server side. It only has an verbose option. So based on my investigation, I'm thinking that debug option might be the most popular one in similar tools. So I'm thinking that users may think about debug in their first trial rather than verbose. Andrew, do you have any insights on the flag name? Currently, users are confused by ORAS, by two options in ORAS. You know, ORAS has debug and verbose options to enable different levels of verbose output and debug logs. We want to have only one unified option for ORAS users.
Interesting. I would say verbose only because debug is only one classification of logging. Like, is there a trace? It makes it more ambiguous versus verbose. You can basically say, we'll just give you everything.
Sorry, Andrew, could you rephrase your last point?
Right now, if we just have debug, if we happen to have trace logic, trace logging,
Yeah.
how would that be captured? Would that be verbose? It would not be part of debug because it's more fine-grained than debug. So I would just go and just say verbose, and that would be everything that's deeper than log than info.
Yeah. Currently, in ORAS v1.2, the debug logs will generate the HTTP trace logs as it is, and the verbose, the current verbose log is to output the status information like the progress of the file download and upload. And we have a document to clarify what are the different types of output in ORAS. Hey, Shui, please.
So I think before we discussing how we classify the debug log, we use verbose or debug flags. We should have consensus on the type of output. So currently in ORAS, we have two major types of output. Not output that is printed out to the user. That is the output itself, and also the logs. For the output, we have three subtypes. One is the status output, metadata output, and the content output. And for the logs, we currently only have the debug logs. Yes, Andrew talked about the trace log. Currently, it's also classified as a debug log. So the problem here is how do we print out different types of output and logs. So for output, it's okay. We have the status output, metadata output, and content output. And for the content output, that's the raw content. We cannot simplify them. But for the status output and the metadata output sometimes are too verbose. So we initially, in the initial design of the ORAS, we decided to simplify the output and make it verbose. Make them default. And the original verbose output is marked as verbose output, and you need to have a dash verbose to show the original full output. So that's why most of the ORAS commands, if you specify the dash verbose, there's no effect because there's no simplified output for that command. So basically, the simplified version that is without the dash verbose is the same as the original design output. For the logs, so currently we use dash debug to turn on the debug logs. Yes, but as you have mentioned, maybe in the future we have other types of logs like a trace log, info log, warning, or errors. So from the conversation, we found that we have two kinds of proposals. The first proposal is to have a flag like dash debug, and another proposal from Saja is to have a environment variable to control the switch of the logs as well as the log level of the logs. So I personally I think the environment variable may be a better solution because for the output type, the target audience is the end user. But for all the logs, including those information warning and error logs, they are supposed to be read by the ORAS developers. It's not meant to be read by the end users. If the end users want to use some information to diagnosis their commands at their side, those information should be in the output, like the metadata output or error message output, instead of the logs. Do you have any comments?
Thanks for summarizing, Shui.
I also agree with this classification to classify the concepts into two parts. One is for output, and another one is for logs. And we had similar discussion around the ORAS output and logs when we designed the formatted output in the last release. I think this is a good justification that for logs, it is only for ORAS developers. And output, it can be the standard output with different purposes, like status output with progress bar included, metadata output, like the JSON format, and raw content output. For logs, my only question is that if only debug level logs is captured in ORAS, I'm thinking that maybe it is much more straightforward and less breaking if we only deprecate verbals and remain debug option as it is. Because if we want to merge the debug logs into verbals and remain verbals -- verbals flag to output the debug logs, I think at least it is a breaking change, right?
Not really. Why would it be a breaking change?
Because I think the default scope of verbals is will be changed. Previously, the verbals, as you can see from this doc, we had a discussion around CLI output. So here's an example. Here's an example of ORAS verbals output. In general, the verbals output is by default is progress information. It will show what have been downloaded. But if we change to if we merge the debug logs into verbals output, or for example, if we use --debug --verbals, I think for your proposal, the output will be, the logs will be HTTP trace logs, like that, instead of the progress output as it is right now. So I'm thinking whether this is a breaking change for ORAS, as it changed the default behavior, the default output of verbals.
That's a tough question. Andrew, what do you think? I mean, if we change the behavior of verbals, is it a common? It will be. It depends on clients who take dependency on the output of the tool, right? Like, what is the general thinking here?
I'm always concerned when changing any type of flag because it will cause a breaking change to somebody. At least we'd have to deprecate or put it in deprecation policy so it doesn't break anything and then remove it, change it. It's hard. I did the same thing on Helm and people got really mad. And the reason why we changed something in Helm was we actually changed it so it actually returned a 1 exit code instead of 0, and that pissed everyone off.
Those exit codes, I wouldn't touch that. It generates a bunch of problems for scripts, right?
Yep.
So the basic concern is we would end up changing either the output of debug or the output of verbose if we used anything. One of the flags will get impacted. Debug will get more logs, or verbose will get more logs. In either case, this will happen, right? Or Shiva, are you saying that debug already has all the logs, or debug is the only required logs?
Is this a question
So
for Shui?
I think it's a question for me. So basically, there are different switches, unfortunately. So currently, the verbose flag controls the output that's shown on the screen of Freeman. The debug flag controls the log. So they are different switches and they can do different things. Freeman, can you go back to your previous tab?
The question, are we
you mean-
okay deprecating verbose and only having debug?
I think it's okay because so basically, not first of all, not all the commands has the verbose, I mean effective verbose option. Only a few commands like ORAS pull, push, attach, and ORAS discover has the verbose flag effective. So one proposal is that we can remove the verbose flag and make every command verbose as the default.
In your assumption, I think the --debug option will be the only option to output the debug logs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it's one flag, I'm not gonna fight it. Whatever let it be verbose or debug. I think I'll step away from that battle.
Yeah, and for this proposal, I think it may be less breaking to the current release, and we can definitely introduce this change in ORAS v1.3 because we only have one deprecated flag
Yeah.
dash verbose and use the debug as it is, but we will only polish the debug logs to make it much more structural and organized.
So just maybe since Toddy joined, Toddy, are you kind of okay with that? The idea is to deprecate verbose and not debug. I mean, until now, I thought we would deprecate debug and keep everything under verbose.
I am okay as long as I think the confusion was that we had two different flags,
right?
Whether it will be verbose or debug, like I don't know. I don't have any particular preference, so fine with me.
And another justification is that to align with the industry and other popular tools, I think debug might be much more popular as Docker, Podman, and Helm. The clients that interact with the registry, they also use debug to output the debug logs. Only Curl use the verbose option to output verbose logs. So I'm thinking that -debug might be the most popular option for users, especially for novice. How about other ORAS maintainers? What's your opinion on the flag name? I think this is one of the topic that we have been discussed in the pull request. How about Billy and Andrew and Sylvia? And also Xiaoxuan?
I
am
agree
sad.
with,
Yeah, go ahead, Leah, sorry.
yeah, I just said I agree with deprecating verbose and keeping debug. Sounds good to me.
Cool. I think we aligned the behavior of flags. So I think the conclusion here is that we will have only one flag -debug to output the debug logs, and we will deprecate the verbose option in 1.3. So another question related to the flag and behavior. So
Oh,
it's
sorry,
actually
I have one more question. In the
Yeah, please.
previous issue, I noticed that Sajay and Todi, they kind of want to include the HTTP traces in verbose logs. And now that we agree we should only keep the debug options, do we agree that the HTTP traces should also be in the debug logs?
My answer is yes. How about, I see thumbs up from Toddy. If we have only dash debug option, I think all of those debug options and HTTP include HTTP trace information should be included in the debug logs. Any other opinions? Okay, I see another thumbs up from Sajay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. There's another similar proposal related to the ORAS debug log behavior control.
Shui has
it's-
his hand up, Feynman. Quite
Oh,
some time.
sorry.
Yeah.
I
so,
missed that.
Yeah, it's okay. So we have consensus that we will deprecate the verbose flag. So once the verbose flag is deprecated, we need to have a consensus that we should make the default behavior of all commands to have the verbose enabled as it is now. So basically, the default behavior of the ORAS discover, ORAS pull, push, attach will be changed with extra output. Is that okay?
No, why would we need that? I mean, wouldn't we just say that if somebody passes in verbose, wouldn't we just say this flag is being deprecated and be done with?
Yes. I mean, yes, that's right. But what about the default output? I mean, without the flag.
I don't think we should change the default output because that would. What is your thinking on why do you want to change the default output?
Okay.
I think Shui, you are asking
because-
the
Yeah. So basically, once we deprecate the verbose log, that means eventually we will remove that flag, right?
Correct.
Yes. And after we remove the verbose flag, how can the users get more information? Like, for example, for ORAS Discover, if you toggle the verbose log, no, verbose log, well, verbose option, you can get the annotation from the tree view. But without the verbose flag,
I see. So I think, I mean, honestly, using verbose for behavior change seems a little odd. I mean, if they want more detailed information, you typically have things like long form, include something, or change the actual command itself to reflect what we want. So I think it would be better if we went down the commands and actually described. For example, discover, you want to include annotation, then you do something like a dash dash long or dash dash detailed, because those are output formats, right? They're not actually log formats. I think we've kind of overloaded logging with output here in some form or the other. So, I mean, that's my take. I mean, you want to affect the output, you specify that this is my option for I want the output with or extra information or format and things like that.
oh, I see. Okay. So basically, I know what's the gap here. So the gap here is that when people see verbose, it's not kind of dash details. It's more like a log level stuff.
Correct.
Correct.
Anybody who is typing verbose expects more of logging, like, hey, these are the activities that are happening. But say, for example, like even when you do curl or tar or anything like that, right? The verbose is actually an indication of what the tool is doing. It's not an indication of how I want the output structured, because that, in my opinion, is something you should be able to pipe out and do something with in a script or something like that. So outputs are different compared to log levels, and verbose and debug are more log levels and not actually output related. Anyway, I might be biased, but that's kind of how I've seen it.
Oh, I see. So basically, the change will be like something like for first we deprecate the verbose flag, and next thing is for some commands, that is, we need to add one more flag to output the more detailed information.
Yes, and that would be command specific most of the times. For example, I know that we have been overloading verbose for discover and maybe for other options, but technically what you're doing is the annotations might make sense when you do discover, but it definitely doesn't make sense maybe when you do a blob fetch, but it might make sense in manifest and refers. It's a mix of, I think it's scoped, it should be specific for the operation because these are not logs, they are actually outputs.
Okay, so basically, the current decision is that we will keep the debug log. I mean, we will keep the debug flag, and we will deprecate the verbose flag, and we will introduce more flags for different commands. Any comments? If no,
I have no
and
concerns.
I think
Okay.
so.
Okay,
Because
then
verbose is currently a global flag, reflects to all ORAS commands. And actually, for specific commands like ORAS pull, push, and attach, as well as ORAS discover, if you want to output much detailed information to end users, I think maybe we can introduce another flag for specific commands, because this will not overloading the concepts of verbose and detailed output.
okay. So I think we can discuss offline for those. I mean, the name for the new flag later, and we can just bring up in the community for the final flag names. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think the general idea is as Sajay classified. Okay, I think we align on the direction on these two global flags. Let's continue. There's another proposal. It's actually another question from the PR review. So for the diagnose flag options, is it a common practice to use an environment variable like export ORAS debug equal to 1 as a global switch for debug logs? I saw this comment from Sajay as he proposed maybe we can introduce a switch with using environment variable to control the debug logs for.
If I may kind of expand on that, I think the point here is
as developers and users. I want to discuss the pros and cons of.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Sajay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I was audible. So I think what I was trying to say is we can keep the library and the CLI debugging discussions as a separate work item, because this is not about user diagnostics. This is more about diagnosing a problem with the ORAS CLI or the ORAS Go libraries. And that can be probably standardized where the ORAS Go libraries can also follow the same environment variable and not just the CLI. So I think this can be a more tool-based discussion because it's not a user experience. It's and maybe even tracked as a different issue if that's okay. Does that sound reasonable?
Does it mean we will not introduce an additional environment variable for ORAS debug log control? For ORAS CLI, I mean.
Yeah, I was thinking we'll scope this to make sure we deprecate verbose, unify the flags, and we get that work done. And then if you want to do additional tweaking, we can come up with a second discussion saying that, hey, we want more information with some behavior change, or we want ORAS Go to be more debuggable. And that can be a more, what do you say, low level implementation through environment variables, configuration files. I don't know what we can have different options there. But that can be an entirely different discussion if that's okay. Yeah, but for
Okay.
this scope, I think I was trying to focus on just unifying the flags.
That makes sense to me. If any other folks have opinions on the environment variable, if not, I think we still keep the design of using debug log flag to output the debug logs. And we will not introduce an additional environment variable as a global switch. Okay, let's move on. In my specification, I added a section for some general guiding principles to write clear and constructive debug logs. There's a point that introduced different opinions, like is it much more reasonable to output the environment details in ORAS version rather than in debug logs? My original opinion is that we can generate the environment details, like where's the users running ORAS, what is the operating system version and architecture, and also the environment variables that users have been configured for ORAS, because this information will be super helpful to help ORAS developers to diagnose a specific problem. So the question here is that is it much more reasonable to bring this information into ORAS version? Like we can introduce another flag in ORAS version to add this information, or this information can be added to ORAS debug logs.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I think this output seems more usable. Like when somebody submits a bug or something like that, run the ORAS version. Why would we consider this as debug logs? I'm not following.
I'm thinking that this information is only useful for when ORAS developers want to diagnose an issue reported by a user. I mean, for the OS and architecture information. But I think right now it is also reasonable that we can introduce this information in ORAS version with a dedicated flag like --long.
I'm also confused with that because first of all, it is hard to for ORAS to detect the Linux distribution version of the current operating system. So typically, we will use another command in Linux to reflect the running OS. So I would suggest to keep the ORAS version as it is and let the user to run other command like the lsb release command to print out the running OS distribution version instead of using the ORAS version.
So Shui, your opinion is that this is not in the scope of ORAS. ORAS should not capture any OS level information like OS version and architecture.
Yes, exactly.
And your opinion is to guide users to use other CLI tools to get their architecture and operating system, like the environment information of their to ORAS developers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because
Hey,
sometimes
Toddy. Go ahead.
No, Shiwei, finish.
yeah. Okay, because sometimes the customs environment is very special. For example, maybe someone is running on a ARM 64 CPU, but they download a ORAS AMD 64 binary, and they are running running ORAS. You maybe using Rosetta on Mac. So the environment is very complex. And ORAS cannot detect that. That's the scenario of a Mac user. For a Windows user, they also have a similar issue. That is, okay, it's Windows, but they are running in WSL. Then it's Linux. So ORAS cannot detect that. Go ahead, Toddy.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm trying to figure out what is the scenario we are targeting here. Is it for support purposes or troubleshooting? Payment?
Actually, the purpose of capture the environment details in ORAS debug logs or ORAS output is to help ORAS developers to diagnose specifically on different operating system. You know, there might be some environment specific problems in different OS. So I think at the first step, without the information of the users, which operating system that users are using, I think it is a little bit hard for ORAS developers to diagnose. The scenario is that users may encounter a problem that cannot be resolved by themselves. They will submit an issue or maybe an incident to a vendor, submit an issue to the community. I think ORAS developers we need to know what are the basic environment details of the users are running ORAS.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying this is kind of a support and troubleshooting scenario.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
yeah. So when we collect such information, like I would say we need to provide more detailed these instructions, and I kind of agree with Shiwei because just giving the OS and the architecture sometimes may be misleading, right? Depending on where I captured that. So I don't know. I agree with Shiwei what he said about this. Maybe we should just tell them, look, run that command, additional command, and we don't need to capture it as part of ORAS version.
Okay. A similar behavior in Golang, we want, I think in the latest version of Golang will also capture the OS and architecture information that Golang that running in Golang users. This logic has been used in Golang telemetry, I think. If we drop this information, the environment details, and guide users to use other CLI tools to collect architecture and OS information, I think it may introduce additional communication cost, as we have to proactively ask users about their environment details, right?
We can just put it in the issue template. Just in the issue template, we can say, please run the command to gather OS information, things like that. .
And also I'm thinking if you want to introduce telemetry for ORAS, if that is allowed by CNCF, I think collecting the OS and architecture information might be much helpful for us to understand the general user environments, like Golang telemetry does in their telemetry design. But that's for different purpose.
I mean, just to be really simple here, I just don't think we can cover this. And if the number of issues that if there's a pattern that people are opening issues and you need this information, then I can understand. But otherwise, it doesn't seem really important enough to improve ORA's version. Maybe later, but I'm just not seeing that this is the most pressing point problem here.
So Sajay, your opinion is that we can drop the information of users' environment details, whatever in ORAS version or debug logs, right? Because it is not really useful for
I mean, I would
ORAS
okay.
developers to diagnose.
Just for the sake of clarity, I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm just saying that picking this up right now might be a lower priority, given the goal of this is to simplify debug and verbose ambiguity. That's the only scope I've seen this issue as, and everything else is additive. So I think we can do it, but we can do it at a second round. Hey, Tori, go ahead.
Yeah, I see where actually Feynman is going with that, and I just checked Golang. So maybe we were a little bit confused with the details of the operating system, Feynman, that you have spec'd, because yes, I also think it will be very hard to get like Ubuntu 2004 as details, but we can do something kind of more simpler, like to say, okay, this is the architecture and OS, something similar to what Golang does. But details like whether it's Ubuntu or CentOS or Red Hat and so on, that will be harder to get. It will require much more. We also may be having hard time capturing whether, for example, it's running in the context of Rosetta or the context on Linux subsystem for Windows and so on. So those will be much more work.
So Toddy, you think that align with the behavior of Golang just to capture the architecture information in whatever debug logs or as output, version output is a good proposal?
Yeah, if it is not too expensive to do. So I'll leave it to like the engineers to say how expensive will be. But like if it is too expensive, I am with Sajay to say, okay, maybe it's not priority for now.
You just want to print out the type of OS and the arc. It's very easy. It's just like print out the runtime. But by the way, am I breaking?
A little bit, but we can hear.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just let me repeat. So from the engineering side, it's very easy to have just a one line to print out the runtime Go OS and Go Arc for the type of the OS like Linux, Windows, or Darwin, and also the Arc like AMD64 or ARM64. It's very trivial. But if you want to print out the version like the Ubuntu 20.04,
yeah,
it's super hard. It's super hard.
Yeah, that's super hard. Yeah, I'm with you here. If that's easy, then let's add it to the ORAS version. I'm reading your chat, Sajay.
Andrew, do you have any insights for the environment details? Does Helm introduce any OS level, like the OS version and architecture version, architecture information in Helm output?
It does. I don't happen to have it offhand, but there is considerations for what OS you're on, especially Windows.
I mean, Helm has the similar output for users' environment, running environment details.
I don't know. I just know that there are considerations for different environments. I'd have to go look in the Helm world, but I don't have that
Okay.
offhand.
Okay, thank you. So I think the concept here is that we can output the OS architecture information in the default output of ORAS version, and we don't need an additional flag like --long because we only introduce one more field, architecture, in ORAS version output. Sounds reasonable? I think thumbs up from multiple attendees. Okay, I think we aligned on the second question. The last question, I want to ask whether there will be further log levels like info arrow and warning, maybe other log levels introduced into ORAS debug logs. Currently, we call it debug. We call the flag name debug because it has only one log level debug as it is. So will there be other log level information introduced to debug logs?
I think it will be confusing if the flag is called --debug and then you have different levels. Is that what the proposal is, or?
Yeah,
Yes.
but my vote is no. We won't have anything else for.
Yeah, my vote will be no also.
I think the point is, sure, if I'm reading that correctly, you're trying to describe the log levels. Basically, we don't have a concept of logging in ORAS. It's all output at this point in time. It's debug, it's output and it's output. If we needed logging, we have to have timestamp before the logs. We have to have more information before the logs. It's going to be important to have some amount of discipline on the log formats also.
I think we do have an issue for having a timestamp in the logs.
Okay. Yeah, but I don't see other levels coming in at this point in time. Maybe in a year.
Maybe not, but I listed here because I'm also considered design for the notation project.
Okay.
I mean, so that's why I have the classification there.
Yeah, that's reasonable. So I think the conclusion here is that we will only output the debug level information in debug logs as it is. For other levels, we will not, at least for our next version, we will not introduce other level of information into debug logs. as such, you mentioned the format and discipline of the debug log itself. I had guiding principles defined in this section, and also I have one example to polish the current debug logs in this section. I will continue to add more examples by following the guiding principles, and I think we may need take more time to review those detailed guiding principles for polishing the debug logs.
Yeah.
So the next step here is that we can continue review the guiding principles and the detailed suggested changes for debug logs.
Toddy has a hand up. Sorry, I spoke over.
Sorry, Toddy, I missed.
No, I'm looking at what actually Feynman you're showing, and I had the question how we're gonna recognize or differentiate between requests and responses. So I see that you have the convention that Kuro is using. One of the things I'm not sure whether we need to have also the header part, which says debug request, debug response. Is that required or not? I believe it's, at least from my point of view, is cluttering the log or the output a little bit. Just kind of my feedback on that. Go ahead, Sajay.
No, yeah, this is a longer discussion because that'll change the output format. So I think it'll take some time, but I'm going to focus all my energy on getting on the flag unification, and then we can come back to this also.
I think the request header is the original information in ORAS. It is already included in ORAS debug logs. What is missing here is that the body of the request and response information is missed in the debug logs. So my proposal is to add some missing debug logs like the body into the debug logs. And I have a comparison regarding the original debug log and the suggested change for the new debug logs by following the guiding principles that I listed above. Okay, as we are 3 minutes running out of time, I think we can continue the review, the second round of review on this pull request. I will make changes based on our discussion in this meeting. Thank you, everyone. I will stop sharing and end up here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.